the blank slate. We don't have anything going on here
You
today.
can add that in post, and it could be anything you want.
I could do that, but it's better for it to indicate that we're beginning from nowhere with nothing, as we almost always do.
Yeah, well, that's my aim, to begin from nothing.
But if you have that aim, aren't you already in trouble? Once there's an aim, isn't the whole thing shut?
I have to give up the aim. You're absolutely. That has been my mistake. I have aimed.
Well, and the aim begins with the idea that I think I know what I'm doing. And that often, so often proves to be wrong.
Okay. I think I know what I'm doing, where I'm headed.
Well, this is...
And how I should feel. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I completely agree. That's a great observation. I think I know how I should feel.
Yeah.
In fact, that opens up so many different avenues of inquiry because...
Wait, I have to...
Keep going.
I have to feel. Go ahead.
No, but you're on a roll here.
Well, I was just saying, I want to have a posture. I want to, in my mind, I was saying that. I want to set the table.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have everything where it should be, so I can, what? Like what? I don't know. I think I know, but I don't know.
And that's absolutely true, because when I stop for a moment and just sense myself here, I see that there's this energy present that animates me and inwardly forms me. It informs me. And it's sufficient unto itself. It doesn't have an agenda. It's just here waiting. It hasn't made a plan. It's not telling me what to do, but it's helping me to be. And isn't that interesting, the way that happens? It's strange, isn't it? Isn't it weird?
Well, it doesn't feel weird.
No, no, it doesn't.
But so it feels there's something off, but it's not that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I'm not really balanced there. I'm pitched forward.
I'm pitched forward. I'm pitched forward into thinking. And I got interested in the root of the word intellect and intelligence.
That sounds like a thought.
Well, I got interested in the root because I realized yesterday, literally, not making this up, that I didn't actually know what it meant, and I wanted to see where it came from. And the root of it, very firmly established linguistically speaking, is that it means to stand under, to have understanding. And I conventionally, speaking for myself, others may be smarter than me on this one, but I believe that my thought is understanding, and my thought is actually a process of ratiocination. That is to say that it's associative. It's exactly what Gurdjieff said about it. It takes stuff and it compares them and puts it together and assembles these narratives and dialogues. That's not what understanding is. To stand under, in the Latin root, means to acknowledge a higher authority that you're beneath, and to be vertical in relation to it, because to stand is to be upright. So I didn't really ever know what intellectual center meant. I always thought it meant the part that's doing all the thinking that I am, as you say, pitched forward into. And it's not. It is a part, intellectual center in its rightful etymological heritage of the term, is the part that acknowledges a higher authority and aligns itself upright relative to that. That would be intelligent.
Well, we have two, don't we? The higher intelligence center, and which I wish I could stand under.
Well, I've heard this, but there's little evidence of it in me. I've got lots of lower intelligence and almost no higher.
And it probably most people have the same situation. And I would imagine it's really a completely different kind of material that I'm familiar with. But not completely unfamiliar. I do remember having a moment at a Friday night sitting at the foundation. That was where I understood understanding for that moment. And after struggling for much of the sitting and moving from head to body, and thought to feeling, and there was this transcendent light that unified everything. And I was filled with understanding, and I just recognized initially without words that none of this was mine to have. It filled me. It was a gift, and it wasn't going to stay. Now, there's probably a joke in there about making light of something, but I was made light.
You were made light. Well, Frank Sinclair talks about having, Without Benefit of Clergy, he talks about having several times been in the midst of life. And it wasn't any special place or a sitting or anything, and having a light descend into him that was transformative without his bidding or any expectation. And it's very reminiscent of the light that entered Paul on the road to Damascus. He's a very venal and kind of cruel and difficult man. Well, I'm just repeating stories about him. The Apostle Paul, of course, and he underwent an extraordinary transformation into an individual who, from his writings, is generally acknowledged to have been a great man of the soul, because he was transformed by that light. And it's humbling to think that force is, we're always on the threshold of that somewhere. We don't know what it is. I know that I was sitting in the foundation the year that I came back from Georgia, when my life had been destroyed. It had been very, very terrible. I had moved back into the area. And it was the first meeting that I had been to in any formal sense other than my trips up there. It was the first meeting I was coming back as a home member. I was back. So there was a new dough being struck there, having returned from Georgia. And I was in the hall outside the south room where that copper plate used to be hung. And this light came down to me, which was exactly as you describe. It came down into me, and it was a quite extraordinary experience. I'd never had anything like that happen to me. This voice said, I don't know how else to describe it because it didn't really speak out loud. It said, "We are vessels into which the world flows." That's what it said. And I thought that was really quite extraordinary, and I went to my meeting. I sat. I didn't really say much. I didn't know what to say. And this experience was kind of digesting itself in me. And the next morning was when I woke up, and my relationship to sensation had changed. And it was, at first, it's going to sound strange, it was horrifying. Because I couldn't think anymore. My thinking center had stopped thinking. There was this blank space where all of that stuff took place, and I thought that I couldn't live that way. My first perception, well, I mean, a lot of other things happened, but one of my first perception was that I couldn't go forward in life without that part doing that. And it turned out that it was completely unnecessary. Everything just got taken care of anyway. But that
Everything got taken care of sort of automatically. You didn't have to participate. It was just the machine was accomplishing what it needed to accomplish. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's one way of putting it, but I think that the experience was more that I was in the moment and every single thing that was necessary arrived at that moment. It was kind of like the machine was taking care of it. I remember that a few days into that, I had just started this new job. And it's a textile job, and I was a buyer. It's a serious job. You're spending millions of dollars of the company's money. They want you to be on the ball, and they would ask me questions, and I was blank. And the question would come, and I'd be like, I'm blank. What do I do now? And this answer to the question would pop out of me like someone had opened the blade to a Swiss Army knife, and then it would close again.
Yeah.
And
you were hypnotized.
Well, I don't know what it was, but it was the right answer. And I said to myself, there's this part in me that's like a jack in the box. It gets stimulated and it goes blah, 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 and then it closes up again. But it was doing the job.
You were a Swiss Army knife.
Well, the point, in a way it was, although I'm not Swiss, obviously. But the point was that the machine knew how to take care of everything. And it had, I think the salient point, it has had nothing to do with my awareness of myself. It was indeed a machine.
Right.
That's an educational process for us because we think when the machine does stuff, we think we're doing it, and we're not. The I is not doing those things.
I was talking to someone the other day, and we're talking about a bunch of different things, but I touched on a topic that this person feels something strongly about. And their whole demeanor changed, their posture changed, and they began to spew out these comments that were succinct, to the point, and deflect any question about this particular thing. Boom, 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 boom. And I cracked up and I said, I pushed the practical button, didn't I? You just push that and out spews all these little gems, these candies. They cracked up. They thought that was and they saw that for the moment that happened. But I remember early on, and after I don't know whether I was part of the foundation or still in the gallery group, I went to lunch with a client of mine. And as we walked through the restaurant, I suddenly was blank. I mean, I was moving and I had no thought, but I was carrying on this conversation. I maneuvered to the table. All this stuff was happening and I wasn't participating. I was along for the ride.
Yeah.
And being able to see the client, and it was, I want to go back there. That was good.
Well, it is, I completely agree. It's fascinating to see things from that perspective. I think that we're shown these things as I said earlier, as educational material, but that we then have to learn how to integrate the two parts so that they're both there and that we don't, that they're able to cooperate effectively. You know, my machine, I'm constantly telling people who are frustrated with their mechanicality that you need it. You know, I was on the phone with a guy yesterday who's been in the work many years, and he kind of seems to want to get rid of his mechanicality and always be there. I don't think that's healthy. The machine needs to have its piece of turf, and it guards it somewhat jealously. So if we don't, if we're not kind and loving towards it, I don't think it will help us as much as it does otherwise.
Yeah. And is that the rendering onto Caesar?
I think it is, actually. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's an interesting point. So the merchant in me does have to make some money after all. I remember that when they were younger, my kids had contempt for my point that you have to make money and this stuff. And they're like, you're always about the money. And later on, when my son was like 28 or 29, he came to me and he said, I was wrong.
Parents live for that moment.
Well,
So,
I wasn't right about everything, but
no. Oh, well, God, I hope not. What chance would the child
It's an
have?
aspiration. It's like Lucy, in Peanuts. Remember that Lucy was once asked if she was ever wrong, and she knew the exact date and time that she'd last been wrong.
I didn't know that.
That's cute.
That's funny.
The last time I was wrong, it was on a Sunday at 3 p.m. Well, when I'm under the influence of a higher authority, I see that, which is not so much unobtainium when we're in a relationship with sensation, because already there a little bit of that has begun to act in us. And I see as we began that I don't know anything really. And the minute that I agree with that insight that percolates down into my cells, I open to the possibility that I could stop for a moment and just be here and see what comes next, which is a bit like, it's not the same thing as having the intellect stop, but it's a bit like being more, well, I mean, people say more transparent, more permeable, but I think in the end we all mean we're more receptive. We're not rejecting.
Mm-hmm. I like permeable.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah.
So can I just let this energy inwardly form what's the word for it? A soft place in me that can receive the impression without prejudice, Most of the places in me are hard, and they receive impressions according to the form that's already there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like the round peg, round hole. And when they confirm my expectations, they're just reinforcing my ego. But if I'm softer, a new kind of flexibility arrives in me.
I'm permeated.
Yeah. But we don't know by what.
No. Don't know whether I would say I'm quite yet a vessel.
Mm. I said to myself the other day, if I become a vessel, I hope it's not a beer mug. The alcohol in me is like, gotta be careful.
Yeah, well, they have
non-alcoholic beer mug.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, I'm saying that facetiously, but the thing is that if I become a vessel and grace flows in, there's the old saying, my cup runneth over. And yet having been an alcoholic, I'm cautious about it. I don't want to succumb to some rapturous bliss that...
I hate when that happens.
It's the worst.
No, yeah.
No doubt. But I'm serious about
it. I know.
I'm suspicious about it.
I am suspicious about it too, but is there bliss without the rapture?
Mm.
And because I respond to people who suddenly they have the sense of something else, but then subtly, I think something takes ownership of it internally, and it becomes a possession of mine, and I am filled, and then I go off in imagination.
Mm.
I remember, I don't know why this came to mind, but John Rothenberg telling me this. He had just had a conversation with somebody who at one point in the conversation said, "But you don't understand, I am nothing."
Mm-hmm.
She said it with such egoistical joy that he sounded humorous.
Mm. Yeah, well, there's an old joke about two rabbis in a temple who walk by an old guy sweeping the floor with a broom, and he's saying, "I am nothing, nothing, I am nothing." One of the rabbis said to the other, "Look who thinks he's nothing."
Yeah.
You know, well, it's strange, but
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying I wanted to be that guy, but I want to act the part.
You're going to pretend you're the guy with the broom.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, I like being the guy with the broom. I spent all these years picking up garbage in Tallman. I made it a mission when I had the famous dog Isabel. I would bring a bag with me every single time I walked her and pick up garbage. And eventually, after it was probably 5 or 6 years of, it was thousands of dog walks, literally, by that time, there wasn't any garbage left. I had to go searching for it in obscure corners of the area that I was cleaning. And it stayed that way because people, once they saw it was clean, stopped throwing all their trash there. But the experience that I always had of that as I did it was that it was about what I was capable of, was picking up garbage, that I actually understood that from, this is going to sound stupid in a way, but I understand from a physical and emotional and an intellectual point of view, inwardly, I understand the rightness of that action, to just do that selflessly because it is the right thing. And it's a very basic place to start, but it was helpful for me to do that because I learned to see my limits. And I said, I actually was entitled from not so much an egoistic point of view to say I'm a pretty good garbage man. That was an accomplishment in my mind. In my experience, that was an accomplishment to become a decent garbage man. No facetious inflection or cynicism intended. That was really, I learned to have a love for that act because it was selfless.
So you have an aim, and yet it was an aim that allowed you to recognize something in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it didn't start out that way. It started out with outrage about the garbage, but it ended with me seeing that we serve. If we serve selflessly, it's a right thing to do. I mean, most of the service I perform, there's a degree of self-interest in it, plenty of it.
Yeah.
But, again, it's back to seeing that I'm under a higher authority and agreeing to that. That's intelligence. I'm fairly certain that's intelligence, because every time I find myself in that place where it's gifted to me to experience that, I think that is intelligent. I don't know, that's the way it feels. Speaking of feeling.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand it, and I think in some way, maybe what is intelligent is the ability to discern this energy from in the process of separating the wheat from the chaff, perhaps, or just being awake to this appearance of something, and the willingness or the need to allow. It's It's a place.
Mm.
And amidst all the voices of, well, you need to do something, or you don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. The sky is falling.
We're confused. And I think that maybe if I can accept that, it's helpful, that I'm confused. If I see that properly, sometimes I become a little bit quiet.
What's the etymological source of confused? Is it with something or with contrary to something? Is it contrary to fusion?
We'll have to check that one. It's probably related, and this is just a wild-ass guess, but obfuscation has got that F-U-S root in it, and so it means probably with a lack of clarity, perhaps. I'll have to take a look at it, but I think that confusion and obfuscation are probably related. Seems likely. Anyway, is it Latin? It sounds Latin. It doesn't sound German. Denken, think, is a German-rooted word, whereas intellect is a Latin root. So as always, it's pagans against the empire here in the struggle for existence.
Because this appearance of this energy is and the ability to discern it ends confusion or separates out this from what's confused.
Well, it unifies. Whenever people say that a partial form of experience is no good, I always say it's not that it's bad, it's just partial. We have three parts that can, each one of them, have an understanding under authority. And when they all do that together, it's a completely different sense of being appears. And the first thing I would say about it, I instinctively say of it when I think of that it has respect. It has respect for what's taking place. I'll never forget the night that I was in the hotel business lounge with my employee at the time, 10 or 15 years ago, and she was bipolar. And she was a good woman, but she had her moments, and she was going through one of those episodes where she was ranting, and I suddenly saw her clearly with all of myself, and I felt so sorry for her. I should have been offended and appalled that she was saying the things she was, but all I felt was sorrow for her. I suffered for her. And it occurred to me then that we're all, to a certain extent, helpless, and if we respected that, we would treat one another differently.
Yeah, I find that in moments in our community, a recognition of somebody says something and I say something that shatters or almost shatters what's taking place in the room, and no one responds negatively to it, but it's just. There's a recognition, and if I'm sensitive and willing to be sincere, I feel that I was as if I was pushed out on stage. An element shoved me out on stage in a certain way that revealed my stupidity or my coarseness, and my ego of wanting to be recognized.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a fine line between wanting to be recognized and merely being playful, and it's not always easy to see the difference between them. Um,
Yeah, something has to be there to see it, I guess. Or recognize the smell. You can smell the certain things coming.
well, we also have to be a bit playful, though, and that means taking a chance. So, we're going to step on our own corns as likely as anyone else's when that starts.